Chris Grier has a very important job to do in NFL free agency and the draft, but has caught in a lot of heat over the past couple of seasons. Before we get into today's news and rumors on Miami, let me know your one word on the GM of Miami, Chris Grier. I am Nic Rohloff. This is Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. On today's show, we are going to talk about the gift that the Dolphins may have just received from the Las Vegas Raiders and the Jacksonville Jaguars just a couple days ahead of NFL free agency. Both teams released a key player that Miami could be interested in, and I believe both do fit this Dolphins roster. We'll start with what the Raiders did because they informed that their starting quarterback in 2024, Gardner Minshew, they will release him when the new year begins on Wednesday, March 12th. He has a lot of experience, only 28-year-old, and would be a really good fit for the Dolphins. We know that Miami is going to add at the backup quarterback position, whether it's through the draft or free agency. I would prefer both, whether they sign an exterior quarterback that was not on the roster or re-sign Tyler Huntley and then draft one in the middle rounds in late April. Minshew is an experienced QB that I believe would be a great fit behind Tua Tagovailoa. And unfortunately, with our quarterback situation in Tua, he is injured quite a bit. So you need to have a sturdy backup behind him going forward. Minshew, even though has gotten multiple opportunities to become a starter in the NFL, he has not been able to do that, whether it's in Jacksonville with the Jaguars, whether it's the full 17 games that he played with the Indianapolis Colts in 2023. Minshew has proven that he is not equipped to become a full-time starter, but he is one of the more high-valued backup quarterbacks in the National Football League for a lot of different reasons. One, he's experienced. He had a great collegiate career as well, playing for Washington State. But ever since he's joined the NFL, he's been widely reviewed and raved upon as a top locker room guy. He's an established veteran, as we've mentioned, has been around different organizations in Philly, Las Vegas, Indianapolis, Jacksonville, experienced veteran, and there is a calming presence with Minshew. Is he a bit wild at times when he's on the football field? Yes. But if Tua were to get injured in the middle of a game or miss one or two consecutive games, there is a good presence of Minshew being like, yeah, you know what? I think Gardner can go out and win this game. Now, is he going to do it every time? No, but if you could get 500 quarterback play out of your backup, that's all you're asking for. It's what Andy Dalton has been able to do over the past 3 or 4 seasons. It's what I believe Gardner Minshew would be able to do with the right infrastructure. That Raiders team was a disaster last season. If he had to plop in for Tua for a half of a game or a full game in 2025 with the weapons that Miami possesses with Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, and this passing scheme that Mike McDaniel has, I think Minshew would actually be able to put up decent-sized numbers. I think a good contract for Minshew could be around the 2-year, $12 million range. I would invest in a multi-year contract potentially for Minshew to be a backup for Miami. He signed a 2-year, $25 million deal in free agency last season with the Raiders, obviously not completing that full 2 seasons after being released or informed that they'll release him on March 12th. But listen, folks, if you are signing a good backup quarterback, it's going to be a little bit more pricey than it would be wanted, right? $6 million per season for a backup quarterback. I know it doesn't sound good, but it is something that will have to be shelled out. You could also backload this contract for 2026 potentially to save you some money now in 2025, as we know Miami doesn't have a ton of cap space. But if Minshew is available on Wednesday, March 12th on a 2-year, $12 million contract, I would be all in on that. But be Chris Grier for me. Take advantage of the opportunity to sign a quarterback that is getting released in Gardner Minshew. Would you do it? Type S for sign, type P for pass. It's today's pinned comments. You get hit with YouTube ad break. Scroll down, let it play, and answer the question. The top free agent quarterbacks outside of Gardner Minshew, in my opinion, are as follows. The top 2 are Sam Darnold and Justin Fields, but if you take away those guys, the 8 other players that Miami could be targeting, Taylor Heineke, Jacoby Brissett, Carson Wentz, Mac Jones, Jameis Winston, Mason Rudolph, Marcus Mariota, who we know Miami has interest in, and then also Drew Lock. And that's kind of where I feel on the situation. If you take away Fields and Darnold, who are both likely going to be signed in free agency as starters. I think Fields could get 15, 20 mil per season on a 1-year or 2-year deal and potentially be looked at as a starter. I think he might be the New York Jets starting quarterback if we're going to be completely honest with you. And we know Sam Darnold's going to get the multi-year contract as a starter in the NFL. You take those two away and look at the other 8 options, I think I would put Minshew right at the top of that list. There's other guys on there that I like. One of the names that I really liked the entire offseason was Andy Dalton, but he re-signed with the Carolina Panthers. Minshew goes right to the top of my list as a potential target in free agency for Miami at the backup QB spot. But alongside him, I think these 4 make a lot of sense. I mentioned Mariota. It's been reported by Barry Jackson and the Herald that Andy Dalton and Mariota were 2 quarterbacks Miami could be interested in at the backup spot. We'll see if Marcus could come join the Miami Dolphins system. But I would also put Carson Wentz, Mac Jones, and Drew Lock in this kind of tier of 5 quarterbacks I'd be interested in. Mac, I know it's crazy to say, but I think he would fit well in a Mike McDaniel system. Also, his teammates with Tua Tagovailoa at Alabama. And I'm also a big fan of Carson Wentz if you wanted to go the experienced veteran option. Those are my top 5 guys. But I do want to make sure you are subscribed to the channel because we will be live for NFL free agency. Begins Monday, March 10th. We'll be live that day, so join me, join my guy Justin as we'll be live. And if it goes well and we have a lot of fun, make some signings, and you guys tune in and enjoy the content, we'll even go live on Tuesday as well. Hit that sub button. Let's get to 68K subscribers before we get kicked off on Monday afternoon. All right, I had to do a wardrobe change. No, all seriousness, we filmed a little bit of a portion on Christian Kirk, but then he got traded to the Texans. But I did want to bring up this person as a replacement for the Kirk part on today's show, because Javon Hargrave has been informed by the San Francisco 49ers that he will be released on the first day of the new league year. Hargrave's an intriguing option for the Miami Dolphins. This is someone who was in the Philadelphia Eagles defensive line. Their system was absolutely dominant and then got a massive contract in free agency a couple of years ago with the San Francisco 49ers. Had a solid first season, but had a tricep injury that kept them out pretty much the entire 2024 year. And his big contract is just too much for San Francisco to handle, especially with them having to pay Brock Purdy coming up here in just a little bit. So if Hargrave can be had for cheap, he makes a lot of sense as a potential option for the Miami Dolphins in NFL free agency. Miami needs to fill their entire defensive line room alongside Zach Sieler. We know that Chris Grier is targeting defensive linemen in free agency. That was reported by Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald. We also talked about that on a video a couple of days ago. And if they can't re-sign Calais Campbell, I wouldn't be shocked if they went after a guy like Hargrave, an experienced veteran that has dominant success in the league in the past and could be a dominant pass rusher from the inside, which is some of the most important pressure to get as a defensive line. And we'll talk about Hargrave as a player here in just a second, but I do want to make sure you guys are getting your Dolphins gear. Chatsports.com/Dolphins gray shirt. That link will be in the description and comments of today's video. It is $5 off. Running out of sizes, but get yours today. One more time, Dolphins gray shirt, chatsports.com. All right, when we talk about Hargrave, we mentioned that season before he got paid from San Francisco was an absolute doozy, 11 sacks. And when you get double-digit sacks as an interior defensive lineman, that just puts you in an upper echelon, because when you get pressure up the middle, the quarterback's life is so much difficult. Can't step into throws, have to be evaded out to your left, to your right, where those linebackers and edge rushers can track you down. And Hargrave was really, really good in Philly, and he was really good in his first season with San Francisco as well. Durable player, but was not able to stay on the football field this past season. Mentioned that tricep injury that only allowed him to play 3 sacks. Now, the one knock on Javon Hargrave is that he's not much of a run stopper. If you go back throughout his entire career with Philadelphia and San Francisco, he just isn't as effective in the run game as the passing game. He's been graded out as one of the top pass rushing interior defensive linemen from Pro Football Focus each of the 4 seasons prior to this past year, where he only played in 3 games. But on the other hand, the run stopping has been a real issue. He's one of the lowest grade interior defensive linemen in that regard. But when you think about potentially adding Hargrave to this Dolphins depth chart, you have Zach Sieler, who is a do-it-all guy. He does it in the run game and in the pass rushing department. You add a change of pace guy like Hargrave to rush the passer on obvious passing situations, and rotate him in, obviously, on other downs as well, that becomes a dangerous potential duo. And we know Miami is also looking to add a pure nose tackle to help stop the run. So it's not like you're asking Hargrave to be your number one defensive lineman or your number one run stopper. You're asking him to be a potential change of pace guy and work alongside Zach Sieler in pass rushing situations. It's an intriguing option for the Miami Dolphins. But what say you? Should the Dolphins go after the veteran in NFL free agency if the contract is worth it? Should the Dolphins go after Hargrave? Type Y for yes or type N for no. If you can't tell my feelings on the matter, I would absolutely target Javon Hargrave in free agency if it's for the right price. Like, I don't think Miami's in the business of giving him a 1-year, $10 million deal or a 2 for $20 million deal, although it would be worth the risk on a normal offseason. With Miami having such little cap space and having needs at safety, defensive line, offensive line, cornerback, backup quarterback, I just don't think they could go out and afford that. Now, if it's a 1-year prove-it deal on $7 million, yeah, I would sign up for that in an absolute heartbeat. The one thing that might work in Miami's favor in terms of signing Hargrave or kind of push them in a different direction is just how deep this defensive line class is in the NFL draft. When you talk about this NFL draft class, defensive line, running backs, and tight ends, those three position groups are the absolute best. It's a deep group. And these 10 guys are all first and second round targets. These 10, I think, will all go in the first 64 picks. Maybe Phillips, Walker go into the early third round portion, but you could make the case for all of these guys going in the first 64. Grant, Harmon, Nolan, all first round options for Miami. Alexander, Sanders, and the rest of the crew, all mid round of day 2. Maybe a little bit of a later second round pick as well. The point is this. You can go after Javon Hargrave. You cannot go after Hargrave. I think it's a steal that he's in for agency. I think he shoots to the top of some of these veteran defensive linemen on the interior, but with how deep that draft class is, it will only allow you to get one of these defensive linemen for cheaper than expected, or maybe you just kind of say, all right, we'll sign offensive linemen, safeties, and corners in free agency, and then target defensive line in the NFL draft. It gives Chris Grier a lot more options, which is why this is such a good thing and such a gift given to this Dolphins front office. All right, that will do it for this episode of Dolphins Today. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel as we continue to drop content leading up to NFL free agency. And while free agency gets underway next week, we will have you covered with all news, rumors, and signings that Miami makes. So join the channel and stay locked in.